Okay, a conservative strategy, if you're worried, if you're spooked, which I can understand, it is getting spooky out there. So if you went for the head of the snake, perpetuals is a main narrative. So if you went after BNB, you went after Solana, you went after TRON, you kind of did this perps play, this perpetuals play, and then you went after a couple mainstream memes, Doge. The Doge chart still looks good. If you just draw a line from all the lows, it's up and to the right. If you went for that, you maybe went for some Pepe, and then you know, some of this other stuff, it's like the platform stuff like Bonk and Pump. You know, they have their launch pads, but obviously just by buying Solana and buying BNB, then you're getting that as well, along with this whole like perpetuals futures contracts narrative. And I feel like if you went after hyper, you'd be too deep into kind of like the perpetuals narrative. So if that narrative falls apart or people get burned too bad and people go away from it a bit, you know, I think that something like hyper might kind of fall a little bit because that's the main narrative there. But obviously BNB, TRON, Solana, there's a lot going on those. And then if you had a couple of the memes, people are going to somewhat go after those memes. I think most of the gains for the most part are tapped out for Ethereum and Bitcoin at this point. And like I've said before, guys, some of you have followed me for a long time and even going way back, they're just, you know, people are saying like, oh, it's going to go way higher. I see people still calling for 200,000 by the end of the year for Bitcoin. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. The engagement is low. The morale is low. People are out of money, dude. I mean, just straight up, just think about it. I don't care what country you live in, if it's the United States, if you're in Australia, if you're in New Zealand, if you're in the UK, wherever the inflation is kicking your teeth in, this money has no backing. The United States, our banks have 0% reserve requirement. They have an infinite money loop. So, you know, we're taking the brunt of it. They're benefiting. We're taking the brunt of it. So, see it in the food cost, see it in insurance cost, all this kind of stuff. Just everything's out of control. So, I still do think we kind of finished strong here. But again, people are a little bit trigger happy with the sell. People are a little bit spooked. So, it could take a time to reset. We're kind of testing these lows again. Right now, we might roll over. We might have another death drop. And if we go under 100K for Bitcoin, it's going to spook a lot of people. And it would take quite a bit of money to kind of come in and sort of loft us back up. And it could force some of the people out to just be like, you know what, I've already collected enough. I'm going to get out of here. So we're going to kind of deal with that. And we're dealing with that right now. So that's your conservative play. If you want to go a little bit more extreme and you want to go down the rabbit hole, you could go ecosystem play. So over on Hive, there's Leo Finance, and they have their Leo token, and I'm involved in that, just not from like a developer standpoint, but just as an investor. In Leo is their platform, and you know, basically they're gaining revenue from their LeoDex. And then they have a couple other kind of ancillary assets, Leo Strategy, which is like the micro strategy of Leo. And they have Surge, which is going to be, to me, more something for the bear market, which is going to, you know, be sort of a locked in kind of return, kind of like the high back dollar, pays 15% interest right now, 15% APR on an algorithmic stable coin. That's, you know, been going on for years. And it used to be 20, and the witnesses took it down to 15 so they can adjust it depending on the market and depending on inflows and outflows and stuff like that. Now, with Leo, that's a little bit more of an ecosystem play, and I see those guys are working, they're always doing stuff, and people are engaging, and people went fairly deep into this. So I'm looking at that. There's a lot of stuff that I'm doing to finish this out, because when you look at, like, again, I assess the NFT market, I assess kind of the meme situation, how much inflow do we have? And every time we kind of, when we're getting back after it, and it's like, okay, now timing's going to be right, sort of finish this out, and then we just kind of keep getting death dropped or kind of reset. So that's been tough, I think, for a lot of different projects. And then for bigger projects that maybe have a larger fund or they have a foundation with funding, one of the things that I've seen throughout time is they clinch up in situations like this. We're right here at the end, so it's like, in my opinion, a lot of these projects, the only thing that could save them and kind of get them noticed is to take massive action and do some big things and put that back into developers and marketing and stuff like that. But what they do is they clinch up with the funds. And then it's like, well, you know, if they're on the 4th page or 5th page or 6th page of CoinGecko, what's going to convince a developer to develop there versus just developing on Solana or BNB or TRON or, you know, maybe on Base or whatever someone wanted to go after that was kind of more talked about or that there was more liquidity to. And so I've just seen this play out over and over again. We saw it with Block 1. They had the funds and they didn't put it back in the community and didn't let people build. You got to have a lot of people building. And that's another thing I want to announce. Caffeine AI is available on ICP now. You can go ahead and sign up for that. If you want. The trial period kind of ended. I'd gotten a trial for a couple weeks kind of thing, had played around with it, and they're going through different iterations and stuff, but they did open that up. So Caffeine AI is available, and I guess the game plan with that is that the cycle burn rate of people like launching projects on ICP, you know, would actually push a lot of demand to ICP, to the Internet Computer Protocol. So that's the play there. Obviously, price action has not looked good. Price action hasn't been looking good on Avalanche. Price action hasn't looked good on Cosmos. Price action hasn't looked good on HBAR. You know, it's like there's a lot of stuff that has really just kind of gotten beaten down where the tech is there. Things look positive, and then it's just, it's not kind of converting. It's not converting. And, you know, there's always a worry of investors being upside down, being disgruntled, being upset with the situation. So you got to kind of tread lightly, and to swing back around, like I said, I think a safer play, if someone wants to just go like kind of safer to finish this out, forget about Bitcoin, forget about Ethereum, go after BNB, TRON, Solana, maybe a couple memes, DOGE, PEPE. Maybe you go after a privacy play. You know, Monero had some issues and stuff with the 51% attack, you know, it happened earlier, but it seems like the price has stabilized. And then Zcash has went on a huge run. I don't know how many legs it has because, you know, people could take some profits and stuff. So maybe it pushes higher. You know, so that being said, that would be a conservative play, and you could kind of go down. Well, that's another thing. So Leo Finance, for LeoDex, they were adding perps, you know, the Perpetual Futures contract through their LeoDex, and they have access to a lot of different chains, so you can get out in and out. So Leo is actually available on basically like Polygon, BNB, Arbitrum, Base, quite a few different chains, and on Hive through the Hive engine. So they're originally based on Hive, and then they've kind of made more of their base chains more kind of Arbitrum 1 and Base. So they're doing a lot there and stuff. So doing a lot of interesting things, and they're working, they're trying to do, you know what I mean? They're doing stuff. So it's, you know, it's tough to stay after it. And so are some things to look at. And, you know, you can go to InLeo, just look up IN, like InLeo. I think it's .io. I always have it in a tab, so I'm always going to it directly and stuff, but I think it's .io. And then yeah, and then it's LeoDex, I think .io. So you can kind of look at that. But anyway, those are some ideas if you want to stay more conservative and stuff like that. But I think the biggest worry is that even with some of these layer ones that have had bad price action, that they clinch up the funding even more. And we've seen that on Hive. They have a decentralized fund, and so does Steam. And then they don't want to approve anybody to develop. So it's like, I mean, where's the incentive to develop? Like, you could get people on this, working on this full time and marketing this and stuff like that. So at this point in the cycle, you've got to sprint. And so all the stuff that I'm working on to finish this out has to be completed. Like, it is going to be completed, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where you're waiting for the timing. The stuff is getting beaten out, but it's going to be completed, guys. I mean, I bring something out. It might not be, you know, it's going to be as good as I can get it. And I'm not trying to launch, you know, garbage here. And secondly, Xena is off the floor. You know, Xena is not floored out like some of this other stuff. You look at the chart on Xena, we're talking smaller numbers, but again, it was 30x. I gave you 30x if you bought Xena last time when I launched it. 30x. Those on Instagram, I gave you FWOG 70x if you bought. Doge. Who owns the California Dogecoin? Me. Who is buying Doge? Heavy, 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 heavy. You saw it. You saw it. 10,000% in a year plus. So you do what you're going to do. You can go conservative, go down the rabbit hole, or you could just start getting on these prediction markets and, you know, start kind of betting on, you know, whether the price is going to go above or below this or whatever. Which is kind of funny because a lot of that's been going on Hive and Steam and stuff for, you know, for years, you know, kind of thing. Like a little bit of the prediction market, but a little bit more manualized. And then now this kind of premise of the prediction market and people gambling on it is getting to be a pretty big narrative, just the way things are set up and stuff with Polymarket and that Kalshi or whatever, however you pronounce it. But anyway, guys, that's that. What are you guys doing? Are you guys spooked out? Because the vibe definitely changed the last couple days, and out on X, it was like people are reminiscing about 2021. I had a lot of fun in 2021. Like, that cycle was fun. This cycle has not been as fun, and I think too, there's like more pressure, and then like everything else out in the real world costs more money. So it's like you don't want to cash out your crypto. So first world problems. But if it comes down to it, you know, can survive out here. So anyway, guys, follow me on all social media at Brian Phobos, YouTube, Instagram, Steam, Twitter, Hive, DTube, Blurt, Arena, everywhere.